Hello out there. I'm Geronimo, and welcome back to GregTech New Horizons. I hope you're ready, because this is where we take things to the next level. It's time to go big. Really big. We've continued to chip away at the machines we need for high-octane gasoline since the last time, and in the process, the cetane-boosted diesel setup has been pushed right to its limit. Luckily, we've secured the Greymaster energy absorber and we started harvesting the Dragon Egg for power, and all it cost us was part of our soul. It's not in its final location. This is a little bit lackluster for such a powerful artifact, don't you agree? If you're excited to see where we plan to move it, subscribe and hit the like button. And comment your lore and build ideas. It's true what everyone says. It helps a ton. We also have a brand new Discord. Join up and come nerd out on building and aesthetics with us. Anyway, with our storage system stabilized, we can rebuild a buffer of fuel to get through the last bits of prep for HOG. And we'll need to power the first processing runs of all the new machines from Cetane 2 until we're actually producing fuel. Before we left off last time, we had crafted stacks and stacks of all the different circuits we have access to. Turns out, it wasn't close to enough. Even once we have all of our machines, we still need all the electrical stimulators and circuit boards for the alvearies so the oil chems from our bees are produced at the fastest possible rates. Aside from the hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, everything we need for the high-octane gasoline will come from the 20 oil princesses and their thousands of offspring, so we want the best setups we can get. And we already have the traits. We'll see if 20 is enough. There are a few bottlenecks we need to watch out for too. The point is, we need new blast furnace coils, more machines, more circuits, more applied energistics, more bees, and more alveary upgrades. Got all that? Be ready for the quiz at the end of the video. Just kidding. But remember I said this project was big? Well, buckle up. It's time for progress. Okay, here's everything we're going to need, at least before thinking about bottlenecks. We're in a new territory now. New alloys, new machines, and new capabilities. We ran out of steel, stainless steel, and titanium on our way. But here we are. We're set up to do everything on an AE subnetwork, a completely isolated storage system to make sure we're never taking away from our power source and always have fuel to burn. The fluid storage components were pricey, especially for where we are with the quest lines laid out in the ancient tome. But the era of automation is nearly upon us. Soon we'll be able to fully exploit our bee friends for the ultimate stockpile of resources. This is going to be a complicated build. It's a bit too much to explain every single thing, but the diagram I made to help me put everything together is available in the Discord, and I'll explain the mechanics we're using to make this go as we progress. To start, let's get the alveories down. The start of the whole processing line is the combs, after all. Each one has 3 electrical stimulators with intricate circuit boards, 2 with 4 diamantine electron tubes, and 1 with 2 diamantine electron tubes and 2 iron tubes. They're all exactly the same, so let's speed this along. There we have it. 20 alveories in and room to grow if we need to. We want to avoid downtime as much as possible, but this is going to be a solid start. Now, let's lay out the machines and see how this will all fit together. This seems like a large build, but things can get tight if we're not careful. I highly recommend laying out the machines for a build this complex before starting to put them down. We'll put the big stuff down first. Definitely don't want to end up short on vertical space. The quad distillation tower for the oil can go here. We want to make sure this fits nicely. Wait, see? Already making mistakes. Better. We've got one other full-size distillation tower too. Maybe that can go here? Or here? Nothing over here. We want the staircase clear. Yeah, this ought to work. And I think there's room for the quad chemical reactor here for desulfurization. Makes sense for it to be close by. Okay, let me lay all this out and come back. That's almost everything. All the oil crackers, distillation towers, and chemical reactors are laid out. We're just looking for a place for the basic gas setup. This spot looks just about perfect. 3 machines, a small distillation tower, an electrolyzer for hydrogen and oxygen, and a centrifuge for nitrogen. That should work. I tried to leave the space as open as possible, A, in case we need more machines, and B, so the building stays easily walkable. Alright, let's get the machine controllers and the other basics in so we can start thinking through the hatch logistics. Okay, the basics are in. The next part is a little tedious, but all the machines follow the same basic input-output rules. Let's start with something easy. These guys can wait. This distillation tower is for distilled water. The reservoir hatch will produce water for the input infinitely. Super easy. And this centrifuge will turn air into nitrogen and oxygen, so it takes the air intake hatch. Very expensive, but saves us a whole setup and some pain with cells. And since there are 2 fluid outputs, we need 2 fluid output hatches. I already made a mistake here. These need to be outputs, and I'll probably make a whole lot more while I tinker with this. The basic rule is that for every recipe ingredient, you need an input hatch if it's a fluid, and an input bus if it's an item. And for the product of the recipe, you follow the same rule. Let me get to fiddling. Alright, this is the last thing that isn't a chemical reactor. Oh, not quite. Ah, there it goes. And every multi-block needs maintenance before it can run. Bazinga. Okay, here comes the trickiest part. The LCRs are a little more complicated because most of them have multiple inputs, but where it made sense, the ones that have something in common are together, like these to desulfurize the 4 different outputs of oil distillation: light fuel, heavy fuel, naphtha, and refinery gas. They also share a common output that we want to save, so grouping the hatches so we can share a tank saves 3 applied energistics channels. There we go. Looking good. Ah, but our soldering alloy isn't. That's a quick fix. And then, let's get this done. That's everything. Man, what an effort. And this is just a start of the logistics puzzle. The very last piece is this EV energy hatch for the final LCR that actually makes the HOG. Nice. Maintenance check. Good to go, mission control. We now have machines, but unfortunately, they can't run without power. Until we're actually producing HOG, we'll have to run off the cetane boosted diesel we already have. It's a pretty long distance, so to avoid flatlining our fuel supply just to fill the pipes, all 3 blast furnaces are off for now. The buffer tanks were completely empty not long ago. They recovered with the furnaces off, but the timing of this project couldn't be more perfect. Until we centralize power, each machine will have to have a generator, and the pipes can't be hidden in the ceiling. But we do want to be as neat as possible. We'll need a quick and dirty basement for this, which will not be decorated and therefore will never be spoken of again after we finish. We're powered up. Let's get this gas setup running. The hydrogen's needed early in the process, so no time like the present to start producing it. The distilled water can be sent by pipe since it only has one destination, the electrolyzer. Just need to find the input hatch. There it is, circuit 4. And on you go. Ah, lovely. Same for you, centrifuge. No reason not to burn it up. That's a lot of nitrogen. Next, we need to pivot away from GregTech power. Sort of. Only a little bit, oh glorious Gregorious, I swear. RF will be a little bit easier to send up these towers, especially since the Ender-IO item conduit and power conduit can share a block space. And it would be nice for this to be as discreet as possible. The oil bee is like the cousin on steroids to the refined bee we have running for cetane, but the downside of the extra productivity is that our new friend is picky about its biome. It wants a normal damp biome, which we'll happily provide for it using witchery potions as shifting seasons, and we'll need a few. All it takes is tossing him down in the right spot. I think this tower's good to go. On to the next. You play with darkness once again, mortal. And yet, I feel no worry. The goddess Nemesis has joined the Earth Mother's righteous cause. A curse is upon your lands. You play tricks with your bees, bypassing the natural order. Now they have competition. Soon your colonies will be forced away. The clock is ticking, mortal. The goddess Nemesis will show you no mercy. How will you defile the planet when your precious fuel fails you? With the bees happily producing, and the only thing missing from the system being the applied energistic storage network, what are these flying things? No matter. It's time to figure out how we turn all those combs into oil, and this seems to be the spot to do it. We'll need another new multi-block to handle the volume, because it's pretty insane. We're going to go with a processing array for fluid extraction. It's expensive, especially in platinum, and we'll want 64 LV fluid extractors to go inside it. Yep, we're at a new level now. Let's check out the platinum supply. Yikes. We probably want to do something about that, but we do have a bit of flattened platinum wire, it appears. We've got a little bit more work left to do, and it's time to hook everything up to AE and get this going. You know what that means. It's time for progress. That should do it. We'll take a tour in a bit. For now, let's get some high-octane gasoline. Forgot the circuit, and here we go. Sweet burnable glory. And how often can it run? Not often enough. Let's do something about that. Then we'll take a look around and I'll try to explain what's going on. Alright, I think we've got the major bottlenecks addressed, and still some options remaining if we need a supplement. It seems crazy, but the 20 alveoles are fully taxed. The only thing keeping this system from running full time at the moment is the combs themselves. I think another 6 or 8 princesses will do the trick. It's just a fraction too slow. Anyway, let's walk through the system. It all starts up here, where the bees produce the combs, which get piped out using Inter-IO item conduit down into a super chest. The combs get pulled out of the super chest with item conduit and come straight to the centrifuge to become oil berries and oil drops. The berries go into this processing array to become oil, and the drops go into 3 single block extractors to become heavy oil. The oil and heavy oil come to these distillation towers. The combs produce 6 times as many oil berries as they do drops, so 3 of these distillation towers run oil and the remaining one does heavy oil. All 4 produce the same output, so all the output hatches point into shared pipes that lead to super tanks. The tanks are the first thing connected to applied energistics, through fluid storage buses. Okay, maybe we'll mention the basement one last time. We've got a basic AE network running from this controller, and we're spreading channels through the building with P2Ps. All the P2P connections work exactly the same. Here's how. P2P stands for point to point. The basic idea is that you can run AE channels into a P2P at one point, separate the P2P wiring from your main network, run cheap cable for as far as you need to, and take the channels out of the P2P at another point. You can use the advanced network card to pair them. Putting a P2P directly on the side of an MU controller block gives you 32 channels, so with 4 P2P connected to this one, we have access to 128 channels throughout the building, meaning we can attach 128 applied energistics devices to this network, like storage buses, interfaces, and terminals. The only trick after that is placing your machines in such a way that no group of machines takes more than 32 channels, which is the max a dense cable can transfer, and trying to arrange the cabling so as few dense cables as possible are required. They're expensive. The main applied energistics mechanics we're using throughout this system are fluid storage buses attached to super tanks and dual interfaces providing fluids. Interfaces have a bunch of use cases that we'll definitely be diving into soon, but for now we're using them to give us a small, localized item or fluid buffer to pull into the machines. With an HV pump or conveyor on the machine input buses, the machine stays full of ingredients all the time. In this case, we're buffering hydrogen, which combines with the sulfuric oil distillation products, light fuel, heavy fuel, naphtha, and refinery gas, and desulfurizes them. All 4 produce hydrogen sulfide, so we're using the pipe sharing technique again, and buffering the clean outputs in tanks with storage buses. The only machines that aren't set up exactly like what we just went through are these. The distillation tower gives distilled water. There's also a fluid heater attached to the reservoir hatch over there to provide steam to the network. We'll get to that. And the distilled water comes to this electrolyzer, which makes hydrogen and oxygen. The tanks and storage bus setup is the same. The difference is the output hatch. For these, we're using ME output hatches, which can cache fluid output infinitely. Since we're using so much hydrogen, this is super useful. Same for the centrifuge, which is sucking in air and producing nitrogen and extra oxygen. Every other machine in here works using the dual interface pump setup for input and the super tank storage bus setup for the output. Every fluid in a tank is accessible to our applied energistics network through the storage bus, so the fluid can be buffered in any dual interface on the network. So with that in mind, let's walk through what happens once we have our desulfurized fuel. The naphtha and refinery gas sit tight until later. Both are used for raw gasoline, but the light fuel and heavy fuel go to oil crackers. I spent some time investigating the most efficient paths to the byproducts we need. Different types and levels of steam and hydrocracking give different ratios of the outputs once they get distilled. We're lightly hydrocracking the light fuel and severely steam cracking the heavy fuel. Octane is produced from the cracked light fuel, and butene, ethylene, and toluene from the heavy fuel. I really thought the bottlenecks would be octane and butene, but it turns out they were hydrogen, ethylene, and toluene. We'll get to how we fix that in a bit. Aside from those bottleneck solutions, everything else happens in large chemical reactors. In order, we've got oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon making methanol, oxygen and ethylene making acetic acid, nitrogen and oxygen making nitrous oxide, acetic acid and calcium making acetone, and the calcium is not consumed, by the way, naphtha, refinery gas, methanol, and acetone making raw gasoline and toluene making gasoline, ethylene and steam making ethanol, ethanol and butene making anti-knock, and finally, gasoline, toluene, anti-knock, octane, and nitrous oxide making our sweet, sweet high-octane gasoline. Now, on to the bottlenecks. We're getting tons of methane that we don't need from everything we're distilling, so we're combining that with distilled water for hydrogen. This is producing so much that we may not even need the electrolyzers, or at least one of them. Similar to methane, we're getting a decent amount of ethane and propane too, and after steam cracking them, they can be distilled for more ethylene. And more methane. Nice! We also have an enormous excess of heavy fuel and the ability to produce it far faster than we can use it. So we're distilling that too for great returns on toluene. And lastly, some of only a few single block machines in this whole setup. At this point in the chain, the naphtha comes from distilling lightly hydrocracked light fuel, which we're doing for octane specifically to remind you, is complete excess. So we're sending that into single block machines to steam crack it and distill it into ethylene. Interestingly, this is the only interface in the whole system that acts as an input to our network. Woo! What a project! At this point, I'm feeling confident with another handful of alvearies, this system will be able to run full time and produce all the high octane gasoline we could ever use. And if not, well, I guess we'll be going nuclear sooner rather than later. For now, we have a pretty big problem. We got a city's worth of fuel, but no city. It's time for some progress.
Run only as fast as I can, but my mind is free to sail across terabytes of reality, to soar above a pixel land in a rocket ship. The 9999 made of megabits. Ladies and gentlemen, leave the world and bring your friends. Step inside and close the door. Shut it out, plug it in, press start and we're flying. No use for your wars, it's love. Cause we build digital castles in the sky as we float on timeless satellites. Cause virtual is where we live, live, live. 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 Run only as fast as I can, but my mind is free to celebrate universes in binary. Spend all day in the clouds and our definitions now. So high, 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 we're not coming down. Ladies and gentlemen, leave the world and bring your friends. Step inside and close the door. Shut it out, plug it in, press start and we're flying. No use for your wars, it's love. Cause we build digital castles in the sky as we float on timeless satellites. Cause virtual is where we live, live, live. Cause virtual is where we live, live, live. Cause virtual is where we live, live, live. Cause virtual is where we live, live, live.
The city rises. Now we have some space to grow. We put all that effort into high octane gasoline because to take the next steps along the path of the ancient tome, we're going to need a lot of power. And HOG is 2.5 times more efficient as a fuel than cetane boosted diesel. Coming up, we'll need to invest in multi-block combustion generators. The standard one is pretty good, but the extreme combustion generator is next level. That can only run on high octane gasoline or jet fuel. We'll need to make a few more investments before we can get to that, but we're well on our way. There's no shortage of things to do for next time. And hey, stay positive out there.